Welcome, Tom Lovett.
Hi, Pedro. Thanks again for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to see you again and chat.
Sir, this is a huge honor. I last had you on the podcast on October 2 on my birthday in 2021. And now it's October 23. It is 2 years later, and you wrote an awesome book, and we will talk about that. And so to have a guest come back, whew, I feel good, sir. You have just made my day, my year. It's just awesome. Uh, and I thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me. Like you were, you were one of the very first people to like support me and like reach out on Reddit. And yeah, it was great to talk to you years ago. Back when it's crazy to think like how much how much how long ago that was. And then yeah, and now the book's done and the book's out.
Ooh, yes, sir. And it is an awesome book. Okay, so here we go. So I wrote down just a handful of questions. So let's get started. So, what inspired you to write this book?
So January, I guess it was 2018. I was going through a very like rough time in my life and like a lot of like big picture things. There was some like family issues. I just been let go from my job, and the job hunt wasn't going well. And I would lurk on r/stutter on Reddit, and I'll be reading these stories of like people, like young people who were kind of like drowning under the weight of their stutter, and I always wanted to help and like write things, but like there were just so many that it just kind of seemed like uh, there wasn't a lot of reason. It was like I can spend a few hours writing a comment to somebody that five people will see, and it'll disappear forever. So I kind of had that tension in the back of my mind for months, and then there was this one night I read the story which I mentioned in the book about a young man who was like who's he was like 20ish, and his life was not going well, and he felt like his stutter was stifling him from doing anything. And like this is a direct quote. Like he ended his post with like, if I believed in reincarnation, I would just kill myself and hope to be reborn someone without stutter. And that was like very powerful and like really stuck with me. But I didn't comment on it or anything. I was just like but it was in the back of my mind that I wasn't doing anything about it. Um, then the next day I go to coffee shop to like apply to jobs. And there was this barista there who I'd seen before, who I thought was like really cute. I was like, oh, she's really cute. But then like we started talking while I was getting my coffee, and it turns out we had some things in common. And I was like, oh wow, like she's not only very cute, like we have things in common. Like I need to ask her out. Like I have to do this, or I'm just gonna like kick myself for the rest of my life. So like, despite all the stress and all these things going on in my life, I went up to her and I was like, "Hey, I think you're pretty. Would you like to go out sometime?" Uh, and I won't tell you how that went, but I left like just so full of like adrenaline, and I started writing a post on Reddit. Just which there's been many posts like this of like, hey, like I also have a stutter. I've also been through some very dark times, but it's gotten better. It's possible. Like if I can do it, so can you. And here's my advice and my experience. Um, and as I started telling the story from that day about asking that girl out, there's other times in my life where like I went up to someone, was like, "Hey, like I think you're really pretty. I'd like to take you out sometime," and didn't go. And all those experiences helped me just go up to a girl on a random day, and just be like, "Hey, despite all the stress, I was able to like sit, speak up in spite of my fear of stuttering." Which like there was a moment where I was like, I can just walk home. I can just walk right out. I'm not. I won't stutter. I won't embarrass myself. I'm just there's the door. There's her. Here's my opportunity. I can just leave. Um, but I got myself to speak in spite of my fear of stuttering. Um, but all those experiences kind of led to that one experience. So as I started telling the story from that day, I realized, oh, like there's these other experiences I need to tell you about. I need to talk about too. And it just went from being like, oh, like one Reddit post to two Reddit posts to like, oh no, like this is I do have a lot to say about this, just on my own advice, my own experience, and that started the book.
Ooh, that is awesome, sir. Because I mean, I don't have to tell you, Tom. Let me see. Every day, well, hold on. Every hour, every a minute, every second of the day is a struggle if you have a stutter. And what I had learned later on in life, I had heard a quote and it just hit me hard. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. And that is the truth. Because I did what you did. I got out of my comfort zone, and then I did it. And it's like, "Woo, look what I did. Look look how far I have come, and look what I did." So that is just awesome, sir. Awesome. Okay, now, so in your book, y- y- you open up about your struggles with stuttering. How did you navigate the emotional aspects of a recounting all of those experiences?
Yeah, it was. Um, it's it's funny because like when I like started writing the book, I was like subscribed to our stuttering. I would see stories come through, and it was kind of like in the back of my mind, but I was kind of like, oh, like I kind of know where I am. I can manage it well enough. I still have bad days. I still have embarrassing days. I still don't speak up at times, but like I was like, I'm kind of like there. I kind of crossed. I'm kind of like in the safe zone now. Um, but then going through the stories again, like uh, it got like pretty emotional at times, and it was also funny because like in the first iteration of the book, which was only my advice and my experiences, um, I told stories of like these times that I'd asked girls out, and like there was a barista at a different coffee shop who same thing. We kind of hit it off, and I went to ask her out, and like it was funny because I was like I spent like 2 or 3 hours one night like working on it, and then I like went to that coffee shop to get coffee, and I was just like, and that was like a bad that experience was like a bad one. Like I was like super nervous and like I stuttered terribly, and I feel like I embarrassed myself a lot. But to like have that in that experience of like, oh, like I was so nervous and then my speech didn't work at all, and then having to go back up to that same counter and be like, hi, can I have like a large coffee to go? Like it was fun.
Oh, yes, sir. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So now, were there many challenges that you had faced while writing this book?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was 5 years, and there was lots of like ups and downs just in my personal life. I started it after getting let go uh, from my job, and then I got a job a few months later. I was writing even though I was unemployed and applying for jobs and worried about money. And then I got a job, and then that wasn't going to work out. So I left that after 2 months, and I was unemployed and worried about money again. And then I got a great job, and I was like, awesome. And it was kind of like cool to like have like a really great day job, and then be like, oh, but I'm also writing a book. Like, hooray for me! And then that job fizzled out, so that was like even worse because I'm a software developer, and there aren't enough people with my skill set. So like for two companies to fire you is like, why are they letting you go? Like, what is wrong with this person that like they'll fire this person twice? Um, so like that ended up being really rough. But then I landed with a really great like contracting company. So I was able to work and even take my hours down in order to spend more time writing. Um, but other than like professional life, which is also financial life and paying the bills, just like 5 years of life is a lot of ups and downs and lots of like, oh, it's going to work out, and nope, it didn't work out this time. But then also just I think just like writing this book really just like basically justified my entire life. Like just it was just like the greatest thing. It was often just a lot of like just like almost like drudgery type work. Like I'd say out of like a month of working on it, like 20 of those days were just like almost drudgery. I was like, this is bad. I was like, I'm writing a bad book. I'm a bad writer. 5 of those days were like, oh, this is going pretty well. And then like one day would be like, oh my God, this is why I was born. Like, this is what I this is why I exist. Like, this is my path in life. I'm so grateful I found writing. Like, um, yeah, it was like, it's crazy. It's like, it really was like the coolest thing I've ever done. And like, I remember like while I was writing, I was like, I was like, if I can like finish the book and then get hit by a bus like the next day, deal. Yeah.
and and here is a great aspect. Okay, so I am not a therapist. I am not a PhD. And research, let me tell you, Tom, I don't have to tell you. Research is, it is my nemesis. And so I do have a background in psychology, but I mean, let me tell you, those research papers, I mean, they will make your head explode. How did you how did you handle the aspect of, you know, doing a deep dive into all of this scientific research?
It was it was so mind blowing that like um, once I got into it, it was like, oh my God, like this is an absolute gold mine. This is so interesting. So as I described in the preface, like, so I've been working either full time or unemployed full time for the first 2.5 years of the book, and I was nearing the end of the second draft of the book when I was like, it was just my advice and my experiences, and I was working with this contracting company that allowed me to work part time, so I could spend fewer hours working, which gave me more time to write, more brain power to write. Um, and I wasn't like killing myself to write 2 nights a week. I could write much more. So once I had more time, like one night, I sat down to work to write. And I just Googled like what causes stuttering, and one paper was this kind of master's thesis of a historical overview of different like supposed causes and cures of stuttering. I was like, yeah, there isn't that wasn't great. And then the second one I read was the study by Kellen Neumann, a 2008 paper that like yeah it's one of like the most important like stuttering papers like in the entire book, that showed that uh, intensive speech therapy uh, improved fluency by reducing like by changing the brain. And it showed me that we know that researchers knew a lot more about like what causes stuttering in the brain and then what we can do about it. And then like even crazier on top of all that was the idea of successful management, and that like that stutterers brains fire differently during speech than a fluent speakers, like kind of makes sense. um, and that can get worse. There can be adaptations by the brain that try to improve fluency to actually make it worse. And intensive speech therapy removes those and kind of brings it back to baseline, which is still stuttering, so like 2% stuttered syllables. Um, but that there's this whole different path of people, of highly fluent stutterers who still have stutter, are still nervous about it, um, but much more fluent, and it wasn't caused by speech therapy. And that this group of stutterers like have a brain activation pattern that's completely different than either fluent speakers or other stutterers. And that like blew my mind. And I was like, that's how I felt, because at that time in my life I was like, oh, like I am way more fluent than I was when I was younger, but it's also with like less effort or just like less struggle. um, and so that was just so, I mean, that experience alone was like, oh my God. And I was like, holy crap, this is insane. I was going to write the entire chapter, the science chapter, about that paper alone. And then my childhood best friend, who's worked in academia and computer science, I was telling him about, he's like, oh, you should go on Google Scholar and read every paper that cites that paper, and read every paper cited by that paper. So I was like, so then I just like I'll go through like any interesting point, because in research papers they'll have a sentence and they'll reference that study right there. Anytime there's something interesting, I would just open that study, and it ended up like I would read one paper, open 10 new browser tabs, read a new paper, and open 10 new browser tabs, and just went on and on and on. At one point, I no joke, like 60 open tabs on my computer when I'm normally like a 3 to 4 tab person. And I was like, okay, what? I make bookmarks of all this. What happens if my computer crashes and I lose all this? And then that turned into making an Excel spreadsheet of like what I had read. I also have like a Google Doc on like study notes. I was taking in-person handwritten notes and also on Google Docs. That's like 9 point font and like 70 pages. And it just it was so easy to keep working on it because it was just so fascinating. And I was learning so much. And even if I also realized as I was working on it that I was like, if this was just for me, I wouldn't have read this deeply or this like exhaustively because I read until I was like, okay, I've kind of like gotten 99% of all things I can get down this avenue. Um, I wouldn't have worked that hard at it if it was just for me. But I was like, this is going to everybody else, and this is like incredible insights that people can like just to understand stuttering better and kind of like reduce the mystery of it, and then also like here's something that actually works for management. Here's what we know. It's not like, oh, well, this worked for me, this didn't work for me. Hey, I have this crackpot theory that if you run 10 minutes a day, your stutter improves. It's like, no, this is like research about that with like brain scans and like large sample sizes. So, um, yeah, just thought of like just realizing how powerful this would have been made it easy to work on.
See, now, two things. Okay, so number one, um, I've had 131 awesome people who have a stutter from all over the world on my podcast, and just uh, uh, like you, they're all hashtag awesome. I gotta say that. I gotta put that out there because they're all awesome. And so, out of all of those, two of them had uh, they were in the states, and they had traveled and spent, I believe, it was 4 months of the intensive speech program, um, um, and it had helped them. And I thought, that is just, it is awesome, because you know, when I was going in speech therapy in 1975, Mr. Tom
I was
Lovett,
born in '86.
1975. Okay, um, I had to go. I'm in school once a week for a whole hour, and in 1975, there wasn't research in 1975 on stuttering, but the whole goal was they had to get me speaking like everybody else. And I thought, man, I am broken because I don't talk like anybody else. And and um, you know, I was telling myself that I was born. I'm into a world where I do not fit in. And it's like, how can I do that? And so in school, in speech therapy, a whole hour every week for 12 years in school, okay, they had me go, and we had archaic devices. We had a tape recorder that had a card that had a strip on there, and they put it in, and I had to talk, and they recorded it. It was archaic, but um, it it helped. It helped. I loved all my speech therapists, and so uh, um, you know, I still practice every day because it is a str- you know it is a daily struggle. However, I'm gonna get through it because I'm hashtag awesome. Okay, and then also, number 2, how did you come up with the title of the book?
So I'd finished writing the book January 11th, like 5 years to the day after I started it. Um, and the whole time I had no idea what to call it. I was just like the book, the stuttering book. Uh, and so one night, I just like went to like my co-working space and just like it's like okay, like time to just like come up with names. And I started a whole doc of like I'll just kind of throw stuff out there. Um, I had a few different ideas, but like my original decision was like was words broken and unspoken. The science experience of stuttering, thinking like words broken and unspoken. Not I didn't feel in like a judgmental way, um, but I'm more just like yeah, like we stutter and that's what happens. But my my editor was like, "What about just words unspoken?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a lot better, and that won't give anyone like no one will think of it in a negative way, even if I didn't mean that."
How cool. Okay, now, can we go over just all briefly the terminology? Because I mean, what, growing up, I did not know nothing about stuttering. It's just I have it, I don't know what it is, and, so, can you talk about the, difference between a, a dev a dev the D word, D developmental stuttering, as opposed to a neurogenic.
Sure, and it's funny just like of the insights I got from like reading the research. One of the things that they mention is that like we block more on words that are syntactically complex, and like developmental, like and even the word like syntactic complexity is a syntactically complex word. So just anything that has like a lot of different syllables in it or is longer causes us to block more. And there's even like as we go into and as you read in the book, like there's reasons to explain that, like neurologically. Um, but like to your question, like there's a developmental stutter is what most of us have. It has a genetic source and it leads to changes in the brain as a child. So as a child starts stuttering, the, the brains kind of diverge from fluent children in certain ways, and then as they recover or persist, that changes again. Um, so like recovered children are somewhat different than fluent children neurologically, uh, and then a neurogenic stutter is one that's caused by either like by damage to the brain, if that's through a stroke. In the book, we talk about it is a surgical operation that left a few people with stuttering. There's people who had brain injuries from combat. Um, there's a researcher in New Zealand, I believe, who's doing a lot of research on concussion-induced stuttering. And then there's also psychogenic stuttering, which is caused by extreme stress, which apparently can be resolved through therapy, but I know next to nothing about that.
All right, sir. Uh, Thank you for that. I have a neurogenic. I was attacked by a dog at the age of 5, walking home from school, and then he had jumped on me, and then my head hit the concrete, and so that's how I have my stutter. So, okay, now, um,
Actually,
mhm.
if I can interrupt you, there's a comedian, Drew Lynch, who spoke a lot about his experience. Yeah, I don't know if you talked to him or talked about him, but yeah, he was like 20 or something. He was playing softball, and a ball hit him really hard, ground ball really hard in the head, knocked him back. He hit his head back, and then he developed a stutter out of that. And it's amazing because I would read these studies about developmental stuttering and think, okay, that's a certain like neurological pattern that's different than like a um, neurogenic stuttering caused by like damage to the brain, but like the symptoms and experience seem to be like almost identical, which is like really
I
interesting.
mean, it is super interesting, sir. S- s- okay, now, can you talk about the transition? Because I love how you have this in your awesome book, and so I want everybody right now hop on Amazon and get this book. So I want to have you to talk about this. I mean, because it hit me hard. It hit me hard. Talk about the journey of you are a stutterer, you are a person who stutters, and you are a person who has a stutter.
Um, yeah, like it's funny. Like for me personally, uh, I never like felt like the stutter defined me in any way. Like I remember even as a kid, this is the story that I almost put in the book, but it just didn't quite fit anywhere. I'm like 5 years old, and it's like me, my speech therapist, my mom, and my speech therapist is going like, Thomas, like, who are you? And I was like, Thomas. And she's like, who are you? I was like, I like video games. I like playing sports. She's like, who are you? And like I'm like looking at my mom to be like, my mom's like, give her the right answer. Give her the right answer. I'm like, what's the right answer? And then I was like, I like, and she was like, you are not just a stutterer. You are not just a stutterer. And I was, and like it was very true. But like that for me, like that never quite hit me. I was like, that to me has always been kind of like, duh. So like in the book, there's a like paragraph about like terminology and um, for a, a lot of people, if it is like stutterer, person who stutters, person who has a stutter, I see it as like something external to us, like it's something that we deal with. It's like I'm not inherently a software developer, but it's something I do. And then and stuttering essentially happens to all of us. There's nothing anybody anywhere did that caused you to have a stutter unless they like beat you up and gave you a brain injury, which would be awful. But like, um, it's just something that we have and that we deal with in life, and lots of people have things. Yeah.
Awesome, sir. Thank you very much. All right, so here is our next question. So, okay, in a world where people who stutter might face misunderstanding, misunderst- underst- underst- understandings, or biases, what important a message does your book address uh, uh, that could resonate with both individuals who stutter and those who want to better their experiences?
Um, I think, yeah, like, uh, I think like the two main like benefits of learning so much about stuttering, like that I did like through these papers, is like demystifying it and then like learning like what actually works and that and works for what you want. So I think there's things I learned about like uh, syntactic complexity, like ex- exacerbating disfluency. That was like, oh, like wow, like and that we tend to stutter more on the first syllable of a word and the first word in a sentence. I was like, oh, yeah, huh, like that's something that I just like. It makes a lot of sense. I think for a lot of people who are worried, like, is this an emotional thing or is this something I did wrong? Like, can this be like eradicated? Should I be doing something to eradicate it? It's like, I think just this information about like you didn't cause it, your parents didn't cause it. Like, unfortunately, with the current slate of like of treatments for children, there's nothing like whether you went to speech therapy or not as a kid, it was going to last. Period. So like if you're if you have some like resentment against your parents that like, oh, they didn't put me in speech therapy, or my speech therapist didn't know enough to like fix this for me, it's like they weren't going to fix it or get rid of it. Period. Um, and then when it comes to like managing a stutter, so uh, um, this also wasn't in the book, but it was a really great study about like what are stutterers' priorities. Like, do they want essentially do, do they want to speak more fluently versus do they want to speak more often and not care about their fluency? And I think even like you and I personally kind of fall on like different sides of this, and I think it's a very inherent preference. I don't think you can choose your preference on this or that you were coached into one preference. But for me, like it is, I would rather speak so fluently that people can't even tell, and I just and like I would want to speak like want to speak every time that I want to. Whereas for someone like yourself and some of my friends, like they don't want to worry about their fluency at all. They just want to be able to speak and feel accepted and feel like secure enough to speak. Um, and the great news is, like in the book, I go into a lot about programs that do improve fluency and are shown to improve fluency. Um, but there's also uh, the great study by Ross Menzies is about cognitive behavioral therapy and how this group of people who, before they went to speech therapy, they did eight sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy once a week, and like their metrics of like social anxiety, willingness to do difficult speaking situations went through the roof with no changes to fluency. And then they did speech therapy and it went even higher up. It went like literally off the charts. Um, and then this group that did only speech therapy and no cognitive behavioral therapy only saw like small gains in their willingness to um, speak more often and speak in challenging speaking situations, and no change in social anxiety. Um, so that's the personal side of like you can make no changes to fluency and improve your happiness and satisfaction and how often you speak. But then there's also programs too, like intensive speech therapy. Like it does work. People say like, oh, like I did it and kind of worked for a bit, but it kind of went away. And like that is true. Like if you do intensive speech therapy, it will decrease your fluency to mild. Um, but then that will go away unless you do like the proper maintenance programs. And but there's also two other programs that we go into of like uh, metronomic therapy, where you speak in time to a metronome 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And that too will improve your fluency just as much, but it's essentially free. And you can do it at home. And it's much less time intensive than intensive speech therapy. And also, intensive speech therapy does kind of like speaking using those techniques in normal life is sounds unnatural. It sounds more unnatural to people to speak that way than to just stutter as much as however badly you were before. Um, and then once you even get talking about like improving fluency, what I think what's like the coolest part about like all this is that like so there is this kind of spectrum and people kind of fit like all one side, all one side, anywhere in the middle of like agency versus fluency. And successful management is like the best of both worlds. It's like you speak more often and you're more fluent. And we go into that in the book too. And that's just like the coolest thing in the world. I think is like the idea that like okay, it won't ever go away, which is a bummer because like as I mentioned in the book, like at one point I thought I beat it, and if I just like took good care of my took good care of myself, I wouldn't stutter anymore. Like period. I was like, oh, this be a thing of the past. Um, that isn't the case because it is a brain thing. It your brain can adapt, but this stutter doesn't go away. Um, but the idea that like living better essentially and taking on more of these challenges like directly leads and focusing more on your stutter and learning more about it and learning how to just deal with it with this like almost like foreign entity that's kind of also a part of you, just learning how to deal with that better leads to better fluency and better happiness and better agency. Like it's just awesome.
Oh, yes, sir. Because I mean, I hear all the time, which I'm sure you hear, "Man, if there was only a pill. There was only a pill, my whole life would change." It's like, okay. So, what I tell everybody is, "Look, you do you. Whatever that you wanna do, I mean, because a you know, st- uh, uh, stuttering is so individualistic. However that you want to do it, you go do it. I mean, I know what I have been through. And so, I'm a lot older now. And so now it's like, look, I want to, I mean, I'm here and I have a stutter, and oh, well, guess what? Life goes on. And, 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 and what I have learned is that I just love Pedro. It's all good. And he has a stutter. Oh, well. And so, but, there are a lot of people will, you know, I'm, I'm, I'm taking, a B1 or, you know, the mushrooms or, L-theanine. I said, well, you do you. I'm happy for you. You do you because we are all different. Yeah. So here is our next question. All right. Okay. Now, this one, I mean, ooh, this one touched me, Mr. Tom Lovett. This one touched me. So, all right. So, in your book, you talk about interacting with uh, uh, various individuals who may have reacted differently to your stuttering. How did these interactions shape your uh, y- y- um how did these interactions shape your uh, perspective on self acceptance and the diversity of reactions within our our um our society.
Yeah, so I think I like might be different from some people in that, like, I've said, tell stories about like essentially like being bullied and or people just drawing attention to it. Like, one of the stories I tell is like my like so I joined the Coast Guard. I get on boot camp. I arrive at my ship, which has already like been at sea, um, and like on day one, there's one of my coworkers like in my unit in my department. He starts like laughing when I talk, and they tells me, "Hey, like watch," and like you know that was like very unpleasant, and like I did not enjoy that. For, for me personally, though, it hasn't really affected my um, self concept. Like I don't like I don't feel guilty about having a stutter. Like it can be an annoyance, and absolutely it can like stop me from doing things. Um, but like when people like react that way, it's more. I guess I just get more like irritated with other people, and like kind of like mad that like don't you get it like I mean, which I also understand, like very few people know uh, very few people like understand stuttering like as this thing that just happens to you, and it's worse with stress, but like it just happens to other times for reasons beyond our control. um so yeah, I wouldn't say it would have affected me personally, but I definitely like I, I actually okay. I probably would like if people were less like less likely to react negatively. I would speak up more for sure. I mean that's uh, um, but I guess it doesn't like affect me on an individual level. I think.
Ooh, Tom, because I don't have to tell you, I've had people when I've had a block and my eyes close and my arms go everywhere. And so, I'm having a conversation with them, and then I have the block, my eyes are closed, my arms go everywhere. And then after I come out of the block, I re-open my eyes and they're gone. I was like, oh, okay. So you are not worth my time. So Pedro gonna go. But
Yeah.
yeah, go. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I mean, that's kind of one thing is I hope with the book is in the introduction I talk about like like when when we were young, like no one understood dyslexia for the most part. So like if a kid couldn't read, they'd be put in special ed. They're like, oh, like why can't you read? Everything else seems fine. Your vision's fine. You can't read. There must be some other issue. Um, but now that like everybody kind of knows about it, then it's not a big issue to someone say like, hey, like I'm dyslexic. Like I have friends that are dyslexic that only brought it up when I told them about my stuttering. But I think like if more people just understood like nothing's wrong with Pedro. It's just like there's an issue with like speech motor production, and like and there's that's all that there is to it, and it's beyond his control. He's doing his best. Like you don't have to freak out.
Yes, and plus I educate and raise awareness everywhere I go. Tom, I'm exhausted on the daily. I'm educating and raising awareness because if they have the information, you know, they know how to better handle the next person. Because I mean, that's why I'm here. I mean, I am just an everyday Joe, y- and so you know, my goal always is I want to show the world how amazing that we are. And I mean, woo, Tom, like you and 130 others from all over the world, we are amazing. Oh my God. I mean, ooh, I have the goosebumps, Tom. We are amazing. So yeah. Woo, okay.
Yeah. And it's great too because like I almost never self advocate or even like self disclose. Um, so other than like the book, I've almost never talked to anybody about stuttering. So people like me owe the ones like you a lot for actually going out and telling people and explaining it.
Yes, because I mean, I can't hide this. And then on Zoom, Tom, on Zoom, I disclose, I tell everybody, look, it is not your internet connection. It is Pedro having a block. So all I want is your understanding, your patience, your respect, and your eye contact. That's all I want. I will get over it, but it is not your interweb connection. So, don't hit that button and check your connection. It's just Pedro. Life goes on. All right. So here is our last question, and it's a doozy. So, okay, here we go. Your book might inspire um, and resonate uh, with others who stutter or have faced challenges in self expression. What advice or encouragement do you have for your readers who may be on a similar uh, journey, and what a, a positive um, impact do you hope your book will have on them?
Yeah, I think like the journey and like I've heard other people in the National Stuttering Association, National Stuttering Association also use the word journey, and it really is like um, like I the in the book I open most of the chapters with a story uh, from my life, and the last story is the time when I was at work and we're in this big like conference room doing this like onboarding training, and there's 100 people in the room, and and we're all in groups of 10, and we need someone from each group to like speak to like tell the rest of the room about like what we've been working on, and like and that to me, this was just like a Wednesday at the office, and didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal. And as we're doing that, and we're always kind of working in our group, and then uh, our like uh, leader goes, okay, like now every group's going to talk. I can see that like the rest of my group is like, I don't want to be the one who talks. Oh my god, and I was just like, oh, sure, I'll do it. I don't mind. Like it was like no big deal to speak in front of 100 people. And then once we had those 10 groups, like he's like, okay, like who wants to go first? And no one raised their hand. I was like, I'll do it. I don't mind. Um, and like I only tell that story, and I only do it at the end of the book as like it seemed easy that day, and it was just a regular day. I wasn't like preparing myself for it. I wasn't like psyching myself up. Um, it was just a like regular day, but it was like really incredible afterwards. I was like, oh my god, like I just did that, and uh, it was like it's really about like everything that came before that, of all those times that I like was nervous, but like I just tried, and I just like went a little bit further, and it didn't necessarily work out. Like all those stories of like these few times I've asked girls out, like like all many of them went very poorly. Like I embarrassed myself, where they were just like, no, thank you. Uh, and like it was only by doing it, and like when I was scared, that I was able to do something that scared me in the future. And it really is like, because I also had section two in the original part about boot camp, where the shock of boot camp and it's like the rigidness and the rules, especially around speaking, really set me back. Um, and like before then, I've been speaking up a lot, and kind of like for the first time, kind of gained my footing of like being confident enough to like do phone calls and order things and talk to strangers. Then go to boot camp, I'm right back into not speaking when I know I want to speak, and avoiding and hiding. Um, but like it really was just like incremental small steps forward. Um, is all it is. It's just a little bit past your comfort zone, and that expands your comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I went past my comfort zone and then it turned out well, and now it went well. It's like no, like it's almost even better sometimes to go past your comfort zone and have it blow up in your face, because you're like, oh, like I was really worried everyone's going to laugh at me, and you know what? Everybody did laugh at me. They all think I'm dumb, but you know what? I'm still here. I'm not dead. I'm not, like it'll be fine. Like this thing that whole class is laughing at me will be forgotten about by tomorrow. Who cares? Like you got stronger, and you're able to to do it. And just like this thing, I was thinking even more about like those chapters as I was writing them. It's like the only thing that can prepare you for the hardest thing you've ever done is to have taken on the hardest thing you've ever done the last time. Because there's times you're like, I'm scared of my wits, I don't know if I can do this, I'm just going to go for it. But like, and it's so easy to back down, but like that should get yourself to step forward and go for it. Like you have to have had like a history of doing that, and then once you do that, it's like you expand your comfort zone and things get easier. Like that, speaking in that conference room in front of 100 people, like that just became easy because I had done it so many times when I was scared, and it go wrong, that I was able to like, I was completely calm. I was just like, fine, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I was like, I know this should be way harder for me than for you guys. Like I'm the only person here that I know of that has a speech impediment, and I'm volunteering out of the 10 of us to like talk. And then out of this room of 100 people, I'm the only person to volunteer to go first. I was like, I know what that means. No one else here might have any idea, and no one did, as far as I know. Nobody knew how to stutter, and that was so. Uh, I guess yeah, that's just the advice.
I mean, okay. So a couple of things. One, that was awesome. And then also, you were talking about a boot camp. Well, I was in Air Force. You know, I think we had a little bit easier than all of the other branches of the service,
I've heard.
but they had me as a chow runner. Me, a chow runner, where you have to go and approach a table of 12 TIs, 12 TIs, and you have to ask for a time to eat, for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. I was the chow runner. We were late for every single meal. But you know what? We ate. We ate. And after a couple of weeks, I did it for 2 weeks, and then thank God they picked another person. But look what I did. Look, I mean, I was the person, I'm in charge of 50 people in my company. 50 people, because they had to eat. Look what I did. I got them to eat. Although it was late, but you know what? I did it. So it's all good. Okay.
Yeah, and then like to that point too, it's like once you do those things, like you can always look back on them and be proud of yourself, which is a really good feeling, because I get down on myself a lot. So be like, oh wait, I actually did that, and that was really cool. Um, yeah, and then just be like, yeah, use that as like to not only feel good about yourself, but also be like, next time you're doing something crazy, you're like, well, I did that. I mean, so why can't I do this?
Yes, and and here so here is the cool part. So I am a trainer. Okay? I do this as a career. I train people, I teach people. So I go up on stage. I go up, there is a PowerPoint, big old screen behind me. I got my clicker. It's a 4-hour training, Tom Lovett. 4 hours. I'm on stage, got my clicker, and in the whole audience, I may have 20 or 30, 40, 50, 60. I've had about 80, almost 100. And I go up there and I do my training. I do the presentation and and I am on stage. A person who has a stutter is on stage teaching professionals. How cool is that? And yeah, I do have my hiccups, but I let the audience know if I have a block, y'all need to help me out. And believe me, from the back row, Pedro, we got you. And they call out the word that I can't say. And so the cool part is that at the end, all I hear is, applause from these amazing people in the audience. Look what I did. And I do it a couple times a month. Look what I am doing. And every single time I hop on stage, I tell myself, let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. So yeah, but ooh yeah, I am right there with you, Tom. Every time I do it, I get a little better. So yeah, it's all good.
Let's go, Pedro.
I'm telling you. Okay. Okay. And there is just one more topic that I want to cover because it is important. You know, uh, um, having a support group because I did not meet another person who stuttered until I was in my 20s. I thought it was just Pedro against the world. And when I met that other person on the street, on the sidewalk, when I had my hand out to shake his hand, I couldn't say anything. He could not say anything. And I saw in his eyes. I saw the pain, the anger, I saw it in his eyes. And for some reason, the words had to come out. I know. I know. And that was a powerful moment because look, there is someone else like me out there in the world. So, can you talk about support groups?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's like I knew there was chapters, and like I think I may have even gone to one like as a kid of the National Center Association. And the first one I went to was like literally right before COVID, like March 2020. Um, and like I went there, I didn't know anybody, so obviously I was pretty nervous. And then um, it is and we're having a few like, exercises. I remember like one where like okay like and there's like 15 of us around a conference table, and the leader says okay, like everyone close your eyes and like knock on the table if you've had someone laugh at the way you talk, and you see like everybody knocking, you're knocking, and then they say like laugh if you've ever not spoken because of your stutter, and like everybody's knocking, and then I was like oof, I wasn't ready for this to like actually hit me. I was like I thought I was because like I was like oh like I was like I was already kind of at peace with it, and like I've been writing a book about it, thinking about it every day. I was like it's not going to affect me that much. I'm here to like observe and like be supportive of others, but like I'm fine. um and then, like that got me. And then at that same thing, like that session, that was the first session of the day, and this is a woman who's in our chapter in Boston. That was her first time going too, and like I mean, we're just like sitting around, and like we're still just kind of talking about the earliest parts of it, and she just started crying, and was like, I've never met anyone else who had a stutter, and she was like 30, um, and Since then I've gotten more involved, and I went to the national conference of the NSA last summer, July 2022, and I was kind of like, and I just come from an academic conference, and I was like, well, the academic conference is kind of more my speed. Like I like hearing papers rather than necessarily like someone's own personal experience. Um, but yeah, I went to that, and I was just like, oh man, like it just a lot of it like really hit me. It was very incredibly emotional, like 3 or 4 days. Um, and then I went to the conference this summer, and it, again, was kind of the same space of like, I don't know if it's really for me. I know I should be doing it, but like, I don't know if I'm really going to have that good of experience. Then honestly, the first day or two, I was still kind of like overwhelmed and like feeling like by myself. And then like I just got like this like gang of us. It was all like our first or second year, just kind of like formed and like yeah, like we text each other. We have like we have like Zoom meetings once a month. Um, yeah, this is really powerful. Like one of my friends, Amber, I remember like we're at a session at the NSA, and again, like I prefer like hard data versus like subjective experience because I place more faith in hard data than what like we're humans, we're silly, we come up with lots of silly ideas, but I remember like she was telling a story about like how she was like walking her dog and her dog's name is Ranger, but she struggles with R words. And I remember like just like her just telling how like yeah, I was walking with my dog Ranger, and like someone asked me, oh, like what's your dog's name? She was going like, "Rrrr," and they started laughing at her, and like that just like really affected me. Yeah, and then even at the like closing open mic of this year's national conference, there was someone who got up and spoke, and like he was a chapter leader, and he'd been around the NSA for like 2 decades or something, and he said like I kind of came here thinking I knew my journey, and I was kind of like past the finish line. I was kind of and like, I kind of made it, but then like coming to the conference made me be like no, like my journey's not over. I still have plenty of things to learn to work on, and like I told him, afterwards, I was like, I that's exactly how I felt. Like, and it's crazy. So I highly recommend looking for a local speech, local stuttering support group. In the U.S., there's the National Stuttering Association. In the UK, there's STAMA. You can just Google stuff. And then a lot of NSA chapters, like you can zoom into them, if you're like physically far away, or I mean, like there's people who come to the Boston Zoom meetings who are like in different parts of the country and have never lived in Boston. So everyone's very friendly, very welcoming. The NSA National Conference will be in St. Louis, I think like early July next year. Pedro, you should go because I think you would love it.
I will be there, sir. I will be there. I block my time. I block my time. Yes, sir. I'm excited.
Awesome. And then also since this is the academic conferences. So the academic conferences can be very overwhelming. Like it's funny. Like so, I had read a lot of research papers before I went, so I kind of like I knew like a lot of the neuroscience papers that people were talking about, and a lot of the concepts that they're talking about that some presenters would say like, hey, like this is differences in brain development for children who stutter as they start stuttering and then as they recover or persist. And you kind of see like a lot of like even like speech therapists or like people in academia who aren't working on the like hard sciences kind of like almost be like, well, I don't really understand that. I think like what I aimed to do with the book, and which I hope I've done well enough, is explain the, the latest research in accessible terms. So like if you've read the book, you can attend a Stuttering conference and go to any talk, and you'll be right there with people uh, who are in academia. And the next International Fluency Association conference will be in Austin next year. So Pedro, you should check that one out too.
Well, Austin is in my backyard. So yes, sir. So let me write that down. Austin one. So, um, uh, so, and so Tom, I want to tell you. Thank you, sir. This has been an awesome conversation. Okay, now there is a bookmark. There is a quote on page one. Uh, um, it's on page 100 and uh, 50. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So if I can have you read the third paragraph, because that hit me. Woo! That hit me hard. It's on page 150. So hit it, sir.
Starting with
Yes, sir.
comparing. Sure. Comparing my life to what it used to be, I feel grateful for what I have today. And like Lar Plesco wrote, I feel a sense of accomplishment for what I've achieved. When I think about simple tasks that used to terrify me, like phone calls, I'm proud to say that I now do those things routinely. Contrasting my old self with my current self is no longer scary. It has become a source of confidence.
Woo! Look at this, Tom. Look. That is a. Ooh, yeah. Okay, so. Ooh, yeah. All right, sir. So is okay. So my podcast is now in 125 countries on 6 continents. I am blessed. I am super
Woo!
blessed. Now I know that my people are going to reach out to you. What is the best way to have them do that?
Instagram and Twitter slash X. I'm at Tom Lovett Podcast. Um, I also have a Reddit account. U slash I think it's Tom Lovett Podcast now, or it might be also Tom Lovett, or just I have an or email hi at tomlovett.com.
All right, sir. So so I will have all of those hyperlinks in the show notes. So I want to tell everybody, get the book. Buy the book. Read the book. It's an awesome book. I have read it a couple of times. It is awesome.
Wow.
It sir, you have written an amazing book. I thank you. This is my life. In this book, this is my life. And so I want to tell you, you are a bright light in our whole community. So, sir, I am truly honored to have you here, you know, again. And so I wish you nothing but success.
Well, and thank you. Thank you for having me on again, Pedro. Like, yeah, you were very supportive in 2 years before the book was even finished, and to have this again, yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Like, it writing a book by yourself for 5 years, like, can be pretty brutal at times, and so that support like really helps. And for anyone who's read the book, uh, tell your friends, tell your family members, tell your speech therapist, leave reviews on Amazon because that really helps me as well. And yeah, just reach out, say hi.
That is awesome. And here, oh, here is a cool part, Tom. I did not tell you this. When I heard this, my heart just, I mean, how awesome is this? There are some universities who have our podcasts on their syllabus. I mean, it's
Wow,
like, I mean,
let's go, Pedro.
how cool is that? So schools around the country, they're gonna learn about Tom Lovett's book, let me tell you. And so I am just honored and blessed and proud to be a part of this amazing community. And so, one more time, sir, I want to tell you, thank you, thank you. I want for everyone to go and get his book. It is titled Words Unspoken: The Science, Experience, and Treatment of Stuttering by Tom Lovett. Everyone, go right now, hop online, hop on Amazon, and get this book. It's awesome. Sir, I hope you have an awesome day. Take care, be well, and stay safe.
Thanks. You too, Pedro.
Thank you, sir.